If you can have younger looking skin on your face.
5 races remain as 6 drivers vie for the FedEx Champ Car title. Kenny Breck is 6th in points and today sits in the cockpit of the car that has won Laguna Seca in each of the last 2 years. Despite a mid-season pair of non-finishes, Roberto Moreno continues to dream of the title, having scored points in the last 4 races. Gilles de Ferran has been superb on permanent road courses, scoring a win at Portland and a 2nd place at Mid-Ohio. And Adrian Fernandez is the model of consistency, finishing no lower than 7th in the last 7 races. In his 10th season, Paul Tracy seeks his 1st championship, and 2 wins in a row have given his chances a tremendous boost. They are all chasing Michael Andretti. 9 years after his one and only title, Andretti maintains a fragile points lead, scoring just 6 in the last 3 races. Any of these drivers could leave today as the championship points leader. The beautiful Laguna Seca Raceway hosts round 16 out of 20 in the FedEx Championship Series. Hello and welcome to California for the Honda Grand Prix of Monterey. Ben Edwards and Jeremy Shaw with you once again as we're all set for this tremendous championship battle to continue in glorious sunshine and blue sky here this afternoon. Now, coming into this race, let me tell you, Team Penske are in great shape. Elio Castroneves has taken pole position. His teammate Gilles de Ferran is right alongside him on the grid.
That's right, and once again, these two are at the front of the field. But what is interesting, we've seen both of them share the honours pretty much this season. Who will emerge ahead today, Ben?
Well, it's been an interesting situation looking back over the last couple of road course races. At Portland, Elio had pole, but Gilles went on to win from 2nd on the grid. And a reversal at Mid-Ohio. Gilles had pole, Elio went on to win from 2nd, so it looks good here at Laguna Seca for Gilles de Ferran, and it counts for him in terms of the championship.
A great opportunity for Gilles de Ferran this weekend. Look how close the championship is there. As we said already, 20 points only covering those top 6. But Gilles de Ferran there, he starts on the front row. Michael Andretti, the points leader, he's way back in 11th. Tracy, he's 13th. Fernandez, way back in 17th on the grid. So, very important day for Gilles de Ferran.
Yes, he needs reliability and he needs pace, but I think he should have both. Now, we have seen some worrying incidents this weekend at Laguna Seca. Let's take you back to what happened here on Friday afternoon in first qualifying. Looking at Patrick Carpentier, he went off at turn number 4. The car hit the gravel trap backwards, took off slightly, hit the tyres, and look at this. It vaulted clean over that catch fencing. An amazing accident. And fortunately, let me tell you, Patrick Carpentier was okay. Now, it caused a lot of anxiety amongst the drivers. They asked for some changes to be made to the gravel traps around the course. Cart responded to that, and we're all set to go racing here this afternoon at Laguna Seca. Cars are out on track on the initial pace laps, and we're getting all set now. So let's take a look at the grid in a little more detail. Elio Castroneves starts from his 3rd pole of the season. He's twice been a winner so far this year. Gilles de Ferran won this race back in 1995. Dario Franchitti starts 3rd. He's been the pole sitter the last 2 races. And look at Brian Hurt, a great return, defending champion here.
Juan Montoya, he struggled here last year. Kenny Breck following literally in the wheel tracks of Brian Herter. On row 4, we get Mauricio Guzman for the 8th time this season, the fastest Mercedes-Benz runner, alongside him Christian Fittipaldi.
Jimmy Vasser's 9th on the grid. He won in 97 here. Oriol Servia, the 26-year-old Spaniard, is 10th. 11th, Michael Andretti, a 2 times winner at Laguna Seca. Tony Kanar's been on the podium. That was 2 years ago.
On row 7, Paul Tracy. Well, his teammate is on the 2nd row of the grid. Max Papis, his teammate Kenny Breck on the 3rd row of the grid. On row 8, Cristiano De Mata. A lot of talks about where he's going to go for next year. Alongside him, Alex Tagliani.
Adrian Fernandez is 17th on the grid, 3rd in the championship. Patrick Carpentier hoping to stay right side up here this afternoon. Next up, Roberto Moreno, who was 2nd here last year for Newman Haas. Michel Jourdain alongside.
Mark Blundell, he's another bad weekend. Really no luck at all going his way this year. Alongside him, Shinji Nakano. On row 12, Tarzo Marquez in the Swift, and Alex Barron back in Dale Coyne's Lola.
And Luis Garcia and Memo Gidley round out the grid here this afternoon. 26 cars, all set for 83 laps of this 2.2-mile track. And if we take a look at the layout of the track itself, it has just about everything going for it, Jeremy. Fast and slow corners and plenty of elevation change.
Yeah, plenty of elevation change. A real challenging track for the drivers. Turn 6 there, very, very demanding. Turn 8 and 8A, the infamous corkscrew. But look at that, 55 meters or 180 feet from top to bottom. The lowest point down around about the lake, the highest point up at the corkscrew turn.
The famous corkscrew where we always get those tremendous shots. They're coming around on their initial pace laps. They'll be coming around again before we see the green flag bringing them around to the start. Another quick mention of Brian Herter starting, as we've already said, there on the second row of the grid. We're looking at the onboard cameras. Memo Gidley starting last, so he should have plenty to watch out for on the first lap, and it's been a bit of a disappointing qualifying for him. Also on board with Shinji Nakano, he'll be starting in 22nd place, the Japanese driver for Walker Racing. And as we look further around the grid, we've got several more onboards with you. Mark Blundell, and the news coming through this morning that Mark Blundell has lost his drive with Pac West for next year. So that is sad news indeed for fans of Mark Blundell, out of a drive at Pac West. Adrian Fernandez starting in 17th position on the grid, and as one of the championship contenders, he has plenty of work for him this afternoon. Our highest place onboard camera this afternoon, right behind Brian Herter, is Juan Montoya starting in 5th place.
And another good run there for the Toyota engine in that car. He's back on top of the Toyota brigade this weekend, and just there on row 3. Got the race analysis here. 83 laps. Long way, a lot of G loadings here at this racetrack. We're going up now on the onboard. They're coming up to this famous corkscrew turn. Watch this, you plunge left here and down there. It's 5 stories down. But there should be 2 pit stops in this race, and I think a lot of action in store. Good crowd on hand, fabulous weather. Can't wait to get going, Ben.
No, absolutely. It's what a great place this is to come. We're just a few miles away from the famous Pebble Beach golf course, and 17-mile drive just over the other side. We're right on the coast here. It is a beautiful spot for racing, and for the drivers, they do enjoy this track, but it's not an easy one on which to overtake. Now, Team Penske up front. Are there going to be any team orders coming into play here? Elio Castroneves will be starting on pole. They'll be lining up 2 by 2 by 2 here as we get ready to go, and they'll be very spaced out as they go across the line. They are given the green. Elio Castroneves leads them into turn number 1, or turn 2, the hairpin. Castroneves to Ferrand. Franchitti slotting into 3rd. Herter and Montoya side by side.
And Montoya goes around the outside of Herter there. Brilliant move by Juan Montoya there. Tremendous start by him. He tries to get past Dario Franchitti as well. Just amazed they were showing the green flag there. The field was nowhere near normal order, and we've seen several races earlier on this season, including last weekend in Vancouver, where it seemed fairly well set, and they didn't get the green flag. So yet more strange decisions there by the starter.
Yeah, a little inconsistent, but it has allowed the 2 Team Penske drivers to get away in grid formation. That's Castroneves ahead of De Ferran. As we look further down the order, there's Max Papis tucked in behind Tony Kanaan. They're quite a long way back down the field at the moment, yet both of them are drivers we can expect to perform well here. Franchitti in a good, strong 3rd position at the moment. Should have won last week in Vancouver. Made a mistake on his final pit stop, allowing teammate Paul Tracy to get ahead. And now Franchitti has to watch out for his usual nemesis, if you like. That's Juan Montoya right behind him. These two who battled over last year's championship, but this year have suffered so many problems between them that at the moment they're not really featuring in the points battle, and have to sit in behind these 2 Team Penske drivers, Castroneves and De Ferran, who've been in great shape all weekend so far and were both very fast in this morning's warm-up.
And Christian Fittipaldi shuffled back several positions. He started in 8th, he's back to 10th now, and I think both Jimmy Vasser and Aurel Servia managed to get around Christian Fittipaldi, but there we are looking at the 2nd place car of Gilles de Ferran, and right behind him is Dario Franchitti, and right behind Dario Franchitti is, as you say, Juan Montoya.
It's a Honda 1, 2, 3 as it was in qualifying, and Honda have really moved ahead throughout this season. They were perhaps a little behind the others, Toyota and Ford in particular, at the start of this year, and yet they have come back strongly towards this latter part of the season, and Honda in absolutely great shape. We're certainly on tracks where tractability is required, where low-down torque is required. They've been in such good shape. Montoya, of course, with Toyota power, is certainly hounding Franchitti. Look at this. Couldn't be much closer. Montoya shadowing Franchitti now, looking for an opportunity. This final corner sometimes sees an attempt to overtake, but it's risky. The main place to try is after this straight that you're looking at now. The kink left coming up. This is turn 1, just after the line, and heading down towards the Andretti hairpin. But it's very easy to block at this area of the track.
True. Plus, the key to making a pass down at turn 2 is to get a good run off the final corner, turn 11. And that, on that lap, Juan Montoya was not able to do. So he was not able even to challenge Dario Franchitti. And meanwhile, the front three or four, I would say, closing up a little bit compared to the first time around.
So let's just keep an eye on Montoya as he comes out of turn 4 up towards turn number 5, and we switch quickly back and look at the man who's running last at the moment, Mimo Gidley. In fact, he's not last anymore because he got past Luis Garcia at the start. So Mimo Gidley made up one position at the start, now running in 25th position. He now comes up through turn number 5 as Montoya comes to the corkscrew. Look how close the top 4 cars are together at this point. Nobody really stretching out an advantage. Listen to the engine working hard as he comes down the hill. Down into turn 10. Back on the power and then hard on the brakes here, turn 11. One of the slower corners, about 45 miles an hour. Bit of correction. Power on out. Need good traction there. Perhaps he hasn't quite got the traction he needs.
Yeah, that's right. Look at that Honda. It really leapt away off the corner there, didn't it? And Honda has worked so hard on the drivability of these cars, the tractability. When the driver puts his foot on the throttle, it doesn't waste time spinning wheels. It just gets that power onto the road and off it goes. And Honda has really done a sensational job in terms of that with this motor car.
Michael Andretti, championship leader, running down in 11th place at this point, just behind his teammate Christian Fittipaldi. Another of the championship favourites, Paul Tracy, who has won the last 2 races at Road America and Vancouver, right behind Michael in 12th place, with Tony Kanaan in 13th, Max Papp is 14th, Cristiano D'Amata is in 15th place, then followed by Tagliani, Fernandez, Moreno way down in 18th, ahead of Carpentier, Michel Jourdain and Marc Blundell. So a lot of top names further down the field than we might have imagined, and that's a little bit of a surprise, as up front, no problem so far for Helio Castroneves and Gilles de Ferran, with Dario Franchitti and Juan Montoya keeping fairly close behind. Just remember that Brian Herta's running in 5th, Kenny Breck is in 6th place, and then it's Maurizio Guterman, Jimmy Vasser and Oriol Servia before we get to this little group. There are our leaders as they come across the line. That's 4 laps completed. 2 Team Penske cars followed by Franchitti and Montoya, the leading quartet so far. 5 laps have been completed and our race leader is Helio Castroneves with just a fraction of a second advantage over Gilles de Ferran. It's the 2 Team Penske cars up front. Dario Franchitti runs in 3rd place. Juan Montoya in 4th, chased by Brian Herta, making his return here this weekend, remember, and Kenny Breck in 6th place. Another good qualifying performance from Swedish driver Kenny Breck yesterday. We're riding on board with Marc Blundell out of the final corner, turn number 11. Blundell running in 21st place and chasing after Michel Jourdain Jr. Now, at this point in the race, everybody thinking a little bit about fuel mileage. Difficult overtaking at this circuit anyway. I don't think anyone's going to take too many gambles in this early part of the race. You're looking at our leaders, the 2 Team Penske machines of Helio Castroneves, the younger Brazilian, is in front at the moment of his more experienced teammate. But remember, it is the first season that either of these 2 have been driving for Team Penske. Dario Franchitti running in 3rd position, never won here at Laguna, but always runs quickly. We're just looking at the graphic here showing us how strong Team Penske have been on the road and street courses this year.
Yeah, they've done a lot of work on that car this season and it's really been paying off. They've been so strong on all the road and street courses, as you say. Interestingly, however, last weekend, you might remember that Castroneves had an accident in Vancouver and it was caused by a suspension failure. Well, the team went to work right away after that accident. I was told that within 12 hours of the accident, they were cutting metal back in Poole in England, making new suspension components, front suspension components for those cars. They got 4 complete sets here this weekend and absolutely no problem so far. But the Penske team did admit there was a design flaw in that suspension. It wasn't a Reynard part, it was a part that they had actually made themselves.
Looking at Brian Herta here, and if you're wondering who that is, following the championship regularly, different coloured car of course, and this is Brian Herta driving for the players, well not for players, sorry, for the Forsyth racing team. There are 2 separate Forsyth teams and he should have been racing for Forsyth all year long. The players Forsyth team running Tagliani and Carpentier, and Brian Herta was due to be out of course for the Forsyth racing team, which was formerly Tasman Motorsports. Unfortunately, the deal fell through. They were to have run a Swift chassis, but it all fell apart at the start of the season. So Herta has only been out a few times when he's been subbing for other drivers. And this weekend, he's finally got the opportunity to compete with the team he should have started the season with. He's driving a Reynard Ford. In fact, it's one of Tagliani's cars from earlier on this season. And he's come straight in here to Laguna Seca and did such a great job to qualify fourth. But it's the first time he's never qualified on the front row here at Laguna Seca.
Yeah, that streak come to an end, but nevertheless he was second quickest in final qualifying yesterday. That was an amazing effort. Unfortunately for him, the faster times were set on Friday. Now, also on Friday, Herta did not get out at all in qualifying. They had a fuel pressure problem there that meant that he wasn't able to get out on the track at all. So he had to start yesterday in the slower group, and so he had to come all the way back. But the other thing about Friday, with Carpenter's accident, the second session was delayed by more than 2 hours. So conditions when the second group, the faster group, went out, much, much better, and very few people from that group were able to improve their times yesterday. And Herta jumped all the way from last to fourth.
Looking at another man who jumped up in that qualifying, really the only other man to jump up, this car, the Shell car, which ironically was the car that Brian Herta took to victory here 12 months ago. Remember, Brian Herta used to drive for Team Rahal. Now this man does. Kenny Breck is alongside Max Papis at Team Rahal, and it was the Shell car that Brian used to drive. Now you've got the two of them running here in 5th and 6th places. Somewhat ironic perhaps, and certainly Brian Herta one would expect to see in a full-time ride, having to make do with bits and pieces this year, and watching Kenny Breck do a pretty good job, it has to be said, in his first season of Champ Car racing. Comes to the series with a lot of experience, as we know that Kenny's been extremely consistent, and remember, he's one of those drivers within 20 points of the championship lead coming into this race. So very consistent indeed. Had a third place finish at Road America a few weeks ago, was 9th last time out in Vancouver. In fact, the Canadian race didn't really go according to plan for Kenny, but he's on form again here this weekend and running in 6th position so far. Now, just looking back behind Kenny Breck, Maurizio Gugelmin is having a pretty impressive run. Top of the Mercedes-Benz users at the moment is Gugelmin, running in 7th place. The gap between Breck and Gugelmin, about a second and a half at this early point in the race. 9 laps completed out of 83 as we watch them plunge down the hill, coming down into turn number 10. Little light brake there, hard on the power, quite a fast corner, and then accelerating towards final turn. Looking at Jimmy Vasser. Jimmy running in 8th position, chased by Oriol Servia, and Jimmy, of course, trying to establish his credentials as he seeks a ride for next year himself, having been told by Chip Ganassi he's not going to be racing for them any longer.
Right, and his name certainly cropped up. There's a lot of changes going on, I think, for next year. I talked briefly about Cristiano De Matter a little while ago. His name has been linked. He's actually signed a contract already with Cal Wells' team, but there's still rumours he might be on the move. Maybe the Patrick Racing, maybe the Mo Nunn Racing, maybe the Newman Haas Racing. And this man too, Cristiano's teammate Oriol Servia, we thought he was going to stay with the PPI team as well, but perhaps he might be moving on, we hear. So all sorts of changes all the way up and down the grid.
It is very much musical chairs at the moment, and still nothing else confirmed. We're waiting. We think next week likely that Michael Andretti's move to Team Green as a third car could well be heard next week, perhaps on Tuesday. So we'll have to wait and see whether that happens. But with the news that Mercedes-Benz are pulling out, all these other little stories really beginning to come together, and a lot of details, a lot of contracts to be sorted out, engine contracts, driver contracts, team contracts. It'll all be happening in the next few weeks. But remember, there are still 4 races after this one to be run, so teams have to stay focused on that with such a close championship battle going on. Coming down to that final turn, little train of cars being led by Alex Tagliani is involved in that as well. Mark Blundell, Blundell running down in 21st position, as we mentioned. Behind him is Shinji Nakano. But Blundell, with that news that he won't be driving for Pac West next year, definitely very much on that driver's market as they all try and jostle to get into strong teams for next season. There's no doubting Blundell's abilities in this form of racing. Still very determined, still very focused. We're looking at Michel Jourdain just ahead of him, also with Mercedes Power. So that team will lose its engine next year. They'll have to renegotiate a deal. Now that is the Bettenhausen team, these days run by Keith Wiggins, who was the team boss of the Pacific Formula One team some years ago. And they've had all sorts of engine problems actually this weekend.
Oh boy, they have engine problems, a lot of engine problems the last few weeks in actual fact. And I was told this morning by one of the people on that team that they were already going to switch engines come what May for next season. And I was perhaps hazard a guess that maybe Ford is the favourite for that team for next year. But certainly the change was forced upon them in any case. But I hear that they were going to make the change come what may. So as you say, just one of the many changes. Adrian Fernandez, there's Adrian running now in 17th place. That's not where he needs to be to keep his championship challenge alight. But lots of rumours about him too for next year. Maybe starting his own team, maybe going into partnership with Tom Anderson, who is currently the managing director of Target Chip Ganassi Racing, and perhaps staying at Patrick Racing. Who knows for Adrian? Just all sorts of changes. But meanwhile, we've got a pretty interesting race going on right here, and not much change at the moment. The order pretty much settled down, and Castroneves eked out a little bit of a gap at the front of the field now. It's a couple of tenths of a second a lap the last 3 or 4 laps, and a gap out now to 1.8 seconds. But I think at this stage, early, look, there's Fernandez trying to get away past Tagliani.
Yes, Fernandez had a little look at getting past Tagliani, and that's allowed his teammate Roberto Moreno to get a little closer as they come up the hill towards the corkscrew. It's so narrow up there, though, very difficult to get past. We saw Zanardi do it back in 1996 to take the lead from Brian Herta, but nowadays if you shortcut, if you go across the curve, as Zanardi did on that occasion, you actually have to go back in position or lose the advantage that you've gained. So you can't do that anymore. Roberto Moreno stays in position. Helio Castroneves is our race leader in the number 3 car, and he's opened up a bit of a lead now. 2.1 seconds his advantage over Gilles de Ferran as they come past our commentary position. Dario Franchitti still in 3rd. Juan Montoya is in 4th, chased by Brian Herta, Kenny Breck, Maurizio Guterman, Jimmy Vasser, Silvia Fittipaldi, Andretti, and Paul Tracy. Tracy the last one in a point scoring position. So plenty of action still to come, and Laguna Seca providing us with some great shots once again.
Various aerodynamic configurations been tried on the Lola over the last few weeks, and I think the Ganassi team pretty much settling on a configuration which seems to work well for their 2 drivers, and both of them running well here. Montoya in 4th place and Vasser in 8th.
Yes, Jimmy Vasser, a former winner of this race. We're still looking at this battle between Tagliani and Moreno. Again, it's still dropping back away from those ahead of them. The gap up to 6 seconds now between D'Amata, who is in 15th, and Tagliani 16th. So this is bad news indeed for Moreno and Fernandez. They could really do without being held up behind Tagliani at this point.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Tagliani's engine just doesn't sound right. Maybe a slight exhaust header problem there. It doesn't seem to be causing any major problems, but certainly he's unable now to keep pace with Cristiano D'Amata, and Max Papis in front of him, and poor Moreno finds himself bottled up behind.
On board here with Shinji Nakano, and Nakano running down in 22nd place. He's got Alex Barron behind him, and Mark Blundell just ahead of him as he comes into the final turn here. Nakano, perhaps a little disappointing this season, I have to say, for the former Grand Prix driver. Hasn't really done very much. Lies down in 23rd place, just 7 points scored by Nakano, and his best result in 8th place was in his first race of the season at Homestead. So it really hasn't been as impressive a run in Champ Cars as I thought it might have been, given his Formula 1 experience. Now, here's a man who's been very impressive this year, Helio Castroneves, only 25 years old, in his 3rd season of Champ Car racing, but certainly running quickly now. As we look at a couple more of the more experienced drivers, Michael Andretti and Paul Tracy, 6 points separating these 2 in the championship at the moment. Both have won at Laguna Seca twice in the past, but both find themselves languishing in the midfield here, 11th and 12th places.
Yes, they are, and that's not going to do their championship aspirations any good at all. And the thought that Paul Tracy might have been able to charge a little bit harder. He started 13th, he got past Tony Kanaan in the first corner, and that's the only progress he's been able to make. You can see there is Paul Tracy. Last time around was a 1 minute 12.7, and just a little bit slower than his best so far, running to a pretty consistent pace, as most of the leaders are running a pretty consistent pace out at the front of the field. 1 minute 11.7 for Helio Castroneves last time around. He's actually been very consistent in the mid 1 minute 11 second range, about 1:11.5 for each of his last 4 laps.
Ahead of Michael Andretti is his teammate Christian Fittipaldi, who doesn't seem to be in any hurry to let his teammate and championship leader come through. I don't know whether he would be asked to. It's a bit early in the race perhaps for that, but with both of them running down in 10th and 11th, there's not much happening for Newman Haas at the moment. It's Team Penske, which has been the most successful team here at Laguna Seca in the past. Penske have taken 5 victories at this racetrack in the past, and at the moment it's looking good, but we're still just short of the first pit stop as Castroneves leads. 22 laps now completed. We ride back on board with the champion of last year and a man who surely the announcement, well, we know the announcement is coming, that he will be moving to Formula One. That announcement will be coming next week, or the next couple of weeks, we think, to the Williams Grand Prix team.
Almost certainly think in Indianapolis that's going to be announced finally.
Yes, it's a story that's been around for so long now that it almost seems official, but of course it's not yet official, and we're still watching Montoya with his blend of car control and aggression and determination. Still performing well this year, but it hasn't been quite the successful season he had last year. Toyota power new to the team this season, of course, and the switch to Lola chassis, and perhaps a little work required to get the whole package up to full competitiveness. Castroneves and de Ferran. Franchitti is in 3rd. Here's Montoya in 4th place. Look back and you see Brian Herter in the royal blue car in 5th place. Kenny Breck holds on to 6th place. These 6 cars are now separated by some 15 seconds. Then it's Maurizio Gugelmin running pretty much on his own. He's got Jimmy Vasser around about 2 seconds behind him. Still a good run this from Maurizio Gugelmin, who's had a busy time this weekend, Jeremy. Not so much in the cockpit, but out of it. As chairman of the Kart Drivers Association, the voice of the drivers, if you like, in terms of safety, he has had a very busy time after that accident for Carpentier.
That's right. A lot of the drivers unhappy with the safety features of this racetrack, and particularly the gravel traps. And Mo called a meeting of the drivers after that accident. They reviewed the tapes of the shunt and made some recommendations for Kart. And Kart's President of Racing, Hal Whiteford, went away and communicated their drivers' thoughts to the track officials, and there were some changes made overnight. And certainly, while the drivers are certainly not altogether happy with the safety arrangements here, they certainly have been placated at least by some substantial modifications to the way the gravel traps were laid out.
Yes, and also the tyre barrier up at the corkscrew. They have moved the wall back up at the corkscrew this year, following the fatal accident that occurred to Gonzalo Rodriguez, the very talented Uruguayan who drove for Team Penske here last year. Was killed up at that corner. They moved the concrete wall back, added extra tyre barriers. But the tyre barrier they put in came down near to the track. Just at this point, you can't quite see it. It's off to the left here, and they had that tyre barrier moved slightly after the conference the drivers held on Friday. It all got very heated, but I'm glad to say it was sorted out. Some of the drivers were fairly angry about the arguments that were going on, but I think it has all calmed down now, and certainly getting out there and racing, which is what this series is all about. We are enjoying the last permanent road course race of the year now.
Countdown 3, Jimmy, countdown 3.
Just listening to the radio to Jimmy Vasser. And we're getting certainly into that area of pit stops coming up fairly soon, with 25 laps completed, and the teams beginning to count their drivers down to the first pit stop. On board with Juan Montoya, Vasser's teammate, and Montoya running with slightly different helmet colours this weekend in memory of Gonzalo Rodriguez, the man who was killed at this part of the track here last year. They raced together very competitively in the Formula 3000 Championship. That's where the contact came between them, and certainly Juan felt his loss very deeply, I know, here last year. Really suffered from that, and it's nice to see Juan remembering Gonzalo with that helmet design he's using this weekend.
That's right. There was a very nice memorial service yesterday evening here in the paddock area, and Noni Rodriguez, Gonzalo's sister, has recently set up a foundation in her brother's memory to benefit children in their native Uruguay. That's a great program that Noni is putting together there. She's a super lady, and she's been much in evidence here at the races this season, become a pretty substantial race fan, obviously through her brother the last few years, and she's actually going to be putting on a big celebrity karting event with a lot of old Formula One drivers in particular taking part, which will be in Uruguay early in the new year.
Well, that's good news, and it's great that their involvement with motor racing has continued. Certainly it meant so much to Gonzalo Rodriguez, who had a lot of fans in Europe as well, who saw him come up through the ranks. Now we are watching the first of the pit stops. Here is Tagliani, who was holding up that little group of cars. He is one of the first to come into the pit lane, as is Memo Gidley with Toyota Power in the back of his Della Penna car. Now, had a bit of bad luck in Vancouver last week, suffered a transmission failure which ended his run of point scoring finishes. Let's see if he gets away cleanly. Yeah, not bad at all. Right up at the end of the pit lane, he has to sit on the speed limiter quite a long way here beneath the Budweiser bridge. In the pits as well is Dario Franchitti. So Franchitti, of the leaders, is the first to stop. He was running in third place. Montoya stays out, as do the two Team Penske cars. Herta stays out, so does Kenny Breck. So, new tyres are on, refueled, slight tyre pressure change, we gather, from his first set of tyres, and he's back out onto the track.
And a moment down here in turn 4 there, where Castroneves struggled to get past Tagliani, who came out of the pits a lap down.
Into the pits comes Oriol Servia, the young Spaniard who's been very impressive in his rookie season with PPI Motorsports, and as you mentioned earlier, Jeremy, perhaps being talked about with other teams. We're not sure whether PPI really going to be able to continue, are going to continue in the championship, so we'll watch to see, but he's been a bit of a star so far this season. He comes out cleanly, and Castroneves and DeFerrand still out on track at this point. Now, will we see one of the Penske team cars come in? Yes, Gilles DeFerrand comes in this time around, and this is going to be crucial now. I think Elio's in as well, so both Team Penske cars are in. Elio Castroneves rips off one of the tear-off visors. Now, let's watch them in action here.
Fuel meter, reset your fuel meter. Keep our revs up and watch Prix. Watch Prix.
Beautiful, beautiful stop this time for Elio Castroneves. Gilles DeFerrand gets out as well. Bit of a more wheel spin from DeFerrand. Herta is in at the same time. Now this crew, of course, a little rusty perhaps in terms of pit stops under pressure here. Jeremy, do you think that'll make a difference? It didn't seem to. They got him out pretty quickly, but of course Steve Reagan and the crew, they haven't really done much of that this year.
That's true, they haven't, but I think they've certainly done a lot of practicing over the winter with that. It's the same crew that was going to be making the pit stops this year. They made quite a lot of pit stops this weekend in practice, and I think they'll be just fine.
Hold it.
Christian gets away. Christian out of the pits. And let's take a look. Montoya hasn't been in yet. So Montoya is our new race leader. And we're waiting for him to come in. Is he coming in this time? He's got held up behind. I think that was Tagliani. So that slowed him down a little bit. That will have hurt him on his in-lap.
Sorry about the ooh there, but that was for Michael Andretti, who's making a pass of Gilles DeFerrand going into turn 5. And that's such interesting battle there. Michael Andretti not yet been in the pits. And Gilles DeFerrand has come out on cold tyres. And Michael just trying to make his point there by making the move in turn 5.
Good stop from Montoya. Nice and clean. Gets on the speed limit button as he heads down the pit lane. So he managed to go to 28 laps before making his stop. Impressive. But Kenny Breck also. Has he been in yet? Let's wait and see. I think, yes, Kenny is in now. So those two have managed to push it a bit further. That's good news for both of them. And that could help them as we go through later into this race. Michael Andretti, as you mentioned, one of the later ones. There he is. Michael has managed to push it a long way before coming into the pits as well. But remember, he was a long way behind the leaders. Tyres go on, fuel goes in. And it's a clean getaway, I think, for Michael. And away he comes. So, a great pit stop once again for Newman Haas on this occasion. As we wait to see how the field settles down, we'll find that Elio Castroneves is still the race leader ahead of his teammate Gilles DeFerrand and Dario Franchitti. So no change in the top 3, I believe.
Oh yeah,
let's just check where Montoya is.
Yeah, Montoya got out ahead of Gilles DeFerrand. So
did he?
Great,
wow.
Yes, he did. Great work there.
Yes, there you are. Look, take a look at that. Montoya has moved into second indeed after his pit stop. Wow, that was great work from Chip Ganassi Racing, and Dario Franchitti pressurizing DeFerrand here. So this is bad news indeed for Gilles DeFerrand, trying to make as many points as possible. Looking at a replay here now. What happened to Montoya up at the corkscrew, trying to get past Tagliani, forced over the curb there, and very, very close to the wall. Not an easy place really to try and overtake.
Wow, I think one of the big losers in that round of pit stops was Tony Kanaan, who for some reason has fallen right down towards the back of the pack. We're back in 23rd place according to my chart.
So the bad news for Canaan. Meanwhile, Castroneves is our race leader, but Montoya is a big gainer there on the first round of stops. Into second position. De Ferran third, Franchitti fourth, Herta is in fifth place. Breck back down to sixth, and so the main change there, De Ferran dropping to third, and Montoya moving up into second. Montoya jumping 2 places as a result of that pit stop. Great stuff indeed. So he must have put a pretty quick lap in before his stop, and a quick stop. Question is, would they have short-fueled it? That's always possible, I suppose, but not so likely here at Laguna Seca.
Yeah, the pit windows here are a little bit closer than they are at some other places. Whoa, there's Damata off the road.
Yeah, Cristiano Damata down at turn number 2. The hairpin. He's taken a wild ride. Where was he running? He was in about 7th position before that, so I think he may have lost quite a few places there. This is another replay we're looking at. Something happened to Jimmy Vasser and Fernandez coming out. Look at this. Fernandez was coming in. That was pretty tight, wasn't it? But they managed to avoid each other, and I think that was safe enough as the 2 Patrick cars came in. Those 2 leaving it as late as possible. But watch what happens coming out here. Moreno getting out okay. Let's see what happened to Adrian. Slow stop for Adrian. Oh, and he just tapped his guy on the right front, and that was all a bit of a mess. And you can see the disappointment for the crew members. All went a bit wrong for Adrian Fernandez, so he is down the order now in 17th place by the looks of things. Let's just see. Andretti is in 10th position now. Tracy hasn't gained much. He's still down in 12th position, but our race leader still Helio Castroneves, enjoying command of this race. Helio Castroneves, and I think he'll be, in some ways, he'll be a little relieved perhaps, Jeremy, to see that Montoya's popped into second, because if team orders were ever to come into this between Castroneves and De Ferran, much less likely, of course, if there's a car in between them.
That's right, yes, and so anyone has to wonder whether Ganassi employed a slightly different fuel strategy here. They made the first pit stop on lap 28. They make the second pit stop on 56, and that would leave them still 27 laps to go to the finish if there are no yellows. So as you can see from that, lap 28, lap 56, lap 83, very short pit window. So I don't think it really allows them the luxury of short filling that car on the first pit stop. So as you suggest, I think it must have been a brilliant stop by those guys and a great in and out lap by Juan Montoya. But of course last week in Vancouver, that is what got Montoya up ahead of several other guys after the first round of pit stops. They only put in about 21, bit over 21 gallons rather than the full 35, and that much shorter pit stop made him several positions on the racetrack.
Yes, good intelligent use of strategy. Meanwhile, we're looking at Papis, Carpentier and Moreno as they continue their battle for 13th place. Not in the points, this group, as it's pretty exciting. Papis actually managing to get, well, he's still in front of Carpentier and Moreno. Looked like Carpentier was almost side by side with him at one point, but Max holding on to that position. He's in 13th, Carpentier 14th, Moreno in 15th position. Looking at the fast laps we've seen so far, Gilles de Ferran holding the fastest lap so far ahead of Castroneves, but the 2 Team Penske drivers once again proving to be the class. Having said that, Montoya is holding his own in second position now, having split the 2 Penske Reynards. He's doing a good job in his Lola Toyota. And Franchitti back in 4th place. Herta is in 5th. Kenny Breck in 6th place, remember. And these other guys all just jostling over the opportunity to score 1 or 2 points, as Montoya here continues in his quest for a podium finish. Could do with one. He hasn't had one for a little while. A lot of non-finishes recently. And the last time he was on the podium was when he won the Michigan race. That seems a long time ago, doesn't it? That amazing encounter, battle all the way through that race with Michael Andretti, down to a photo finish at the end, which Montoya won. But that was the last time he was on the podium. He finished 12th after leading most laps in Chicago with problems. Mid-Ohio, he failed to finish. At Road America, he failed to finish. Vancouver, he failed to finish. And just desperately looking for a finish here. And look at that, the Montoya with the BMW already by the Colombian fans. Look at that as he heads towards Formula One next year with BMW power in the back of a Williams. And the fans are way ahead of the official announcement. They've got their banners made already.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see. Certainly Ralf Schumacher had a good run today again, I understand, in his Williams BMW. I think he was on the podium in Italy. So I think Montoya's getting pretty excited about going over there to Formula 1 next year, even though, of course, as you say, he's not allowed to talk about it.
No, that's right. That's to keep stum about it at the moment. As he heads down into the final corner to complete, this will be 37 laps completed as he crosses the line this time. Castroneves has already done that, and the advantage 3.0 seconds between Castroneves and Montoya.
And we're on board there with Nakano. He actually made up 4 positions during that round of pit stops. Otherwise, the only other changes amongst the top dozen were Montoya leaping ahead of both De Ferran and Franchitti, and I think that by virtue of staying out 2 extra laps than Dario, and then also Michael Andretti got ahead of his teammate Christian Fittipaldi.
So Castroneves leads, Montoya second, De Ferran in third, Franchitti still up there in fourth with Herta and Breck. Our top 6 positions so far.
Meanwhile, there is a place change. Patrick Carpentier has managed to find a way past Max Papis, who is now under increasing pressure from Roberto Moreno. That's the battle of 13th, 14th and 15th.
Interesting, isn't it? I'm sure I'm going to speak too soon here, but after a spate of mechanical retirements that we've had in recent races that we've talked about, Jeremy, quite a lot, so far, pretty good in terms, I don't think, has anybody got out of this race so far?
No, we've still got all 26 cars still running in this race, Ben.
And we're almost at half distance. 40 laps have been completed. This is an 83-lap race, almost at half distance. Every single car that started is still in the race, so that shows us something. And we have had 1 or 2 mechanical problems this weekend with engine problems, gearbox problems, but so far, so good in the race itself. Looking at the corkscrew, down the hill they come, plunging blind over the hill. They've moved that wall back, as we mentioned, and in doing so, they've actually taken away some of the trees up on the outside of the corkscrew, and some of the drivers have been saying it makes it quite more difficult. Certainly some of the more experienced drivers, they find it more difficult to find their line of sight through there because they used to depend on 1 or 2 of those trees for their turn-in points, because you just can't see the road at all. And Andretti and Vassar both speaking before the race were saying they've had to readjust how they go into that corner because of the trees being moved. It just goes to show how steep that hill is at the corkscrew.
Didn't seem to affect Brian Herta though. He came back here with a minimum of practice and put that car on the second row with tremendous. It was just a great effort, and Herta's still running pretty well. He's back in 5th place now, and actually last few laps are beginning to fall back a little bit more from Dario Franchitti. Meanwhile, at the front, the gap between the race leader Helio Castroneves and the second place car of Juan Montoya, it was 4.4 seconds after the pit stops. It's now down to 2.5.
I think that's just the fact they're in traffic here. Look, Montoya, in fact, has got held up behind Alex Barron for a moment, and that might open the gap up again. But on the other hand, Castroneves has got himself tied in behind Michel Jourdain. Meanwhile, Papis and Moreno still battling, but Carpentier, as you mentioned, is ahead of these 2 now. Moreno still having a little think about getting past. Here's a replay, and Carpentier managed to get a great run along start-finish straight and was really past Papis before they even began to brake for turn 2, and there was no way at that point that Max was going to try and fight it out all the way. So Papis drops to 14th position, and Moreno still in 15th. Carpentier now will go chasing after Paul Tracy, but there's a good 5 seconds between the 2 Canadians. Lap 43, so we are over that half-distance mark now. Castroneves with a 2-second advantage over Juan Montoya as they came around that time. There's another 2 seconds back to Gilles de Ferran, and then a second back to Franchitti in 4th, and then a long, long way back to Brian Herta. Jeremy, that gap has really opened up, hasn't it, between 4th and 5th place drivers. Franchitti in 4th. We now have nearly 10 seconds back to Brian Herta in 5th. And Kenny Breck is another 5 seconds behind Herta. Surprising.
Yeah, Herta and Breck are running pretty much the same pace, I think. Certainly Herta is falling back from the Honda Reynard of Dario Franchitti by 3 or 4 tenths of a second a lap, I would say, on average. And it's certainly, he doesn't seem to have anything for those cars in race trim, and we've seen a lot of that this year. This Honda Reynard package really is working extraordinarily well.
Look at Patrick Carpentier. He's just put in one of the quickest laps at this point in the race, with a 1 minute 11.5. Most of them are doing 1 minute 12 at this stage, although Herta put in a fairly quick lap last time. But Carpentier has closed within a few seconds of Paul Tracy. So that is certainly showing Carpentier's on the pace here. But what can he do to try and find a way past anyone? We'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, Montoya getting a little frustrated, trying to deal with traffic. And he's still tied up in traffic here.
Yeah, he's just behind the lap car of Alex Barron, and just ahead of Alex Barron there. And look at that, Barron got a bit sideways there, and I hope he's seen Montoya. Montoya coming up alongside him. Yeah, he finally lets him go around the outside, and that's the other lap car ahead of Barron is Michel Jourdain Jr., I think. And just this last time around, Castroneves managed to get away past Jourdain.
It does show you how difficult it is to overtake here at Laguna Seca, though, because you get in behind somebody who may be lapping about a second a lap slower than you, but it's almost impossible to get a run on them anywhere here to actually get past. It's a great driver's track, this one, but I have to say it's not a great overtaking track. It just does lack that opportunity to get a great draft on somebody and still be able to get past them. Surprising, because you've got a slow corner onto the start-finish straight here, which you would think would be ideal in terms of setting them up for a good exit. Perhaps it's too slow. You need a faster corner onto the main straight. We've got a good slow corner at the end of it. You could do with a slightly more quick corner onto the final straight. There's our leader, Castroneves, in traffic, and there is Montoya. And with this traffic, it has brought the gap between the two of them down to 1.7 seconds, and about the same gap then back to De Ferran. You'll see De Ferran in the back of this shot. He's also dealing with the same group of traffic. He has to try and get past Alex Barron over the next lap or so.
Yeah, and in actual fact, the leader didn't get past Jourdain. Jourdain is still ahead of the race leader. It's that man, Tony Kanaan, who was passed by Helio Castroneves, and at the same time, Jourdain found a way past Tony Kanaan as well. So good move by the Mexican driver. But meanwhile, at the front of that track, of that pack of cars, is still Alex Tagliani. Right behind Tagliani is Mimo Gidley, then Jourdain, then the race leader. And behind the race leader is Tony Kanaan, then is Juan Montoya, and closing up on those two, these couple of cars, Gil de Ferran and Dario Franchitti are right behind Tony Kanaan. So a big train of cars there, several of them a lap down. We're going to see some interesting action next couple of laps.
Look at this, Jourdain trying to get past Gidley, and this is not helping Castroneves at all. They're side by side. He has got past Mimo Gidley. This is no problem at all for him, and Castroneves gets past Gidley as well. So Jourdain makes that position on Mimo Gidley. That's put Jourdain up into 21st, but he has to be careful because he's got the race leader right behind him, and Castroneves doesn't want to get involved in everybody else's battles, which is apparently what's happening at the moment. So Castroneves still behind Jourdain, and still that rather sick-sounding engine of Tagliani. He's at the front of this group, so leading them around. You can just see the blue and white car. There it is. That exhaust still blowing on that engine, but it doesn't seem to be slowing him down too much. Here, meanwhile, Moreno and Papis. Moreno getting past Max Papis into the final turn. Could he hold it on the exit? Oh, squeezing across, trying to hold Max back, and he couldn't quite do it. That's a typical move at that final corner. If you go in a bit too hard, as Moreno did, he ran wide on the exit, and Papis able to come back underneath him. Good racing between these two, just about giving each other room. And Papis retakes that position. Frustrating for Moreno, but fair enough racing from Max Papis.
Yeah, great stuff. And so finally, a good bit of action there. Look again. Dives down the inside, Moreno. Great pass there, but not quite able to get that car slowed down enough for the corner. And Papis a much better exit. And off he goes down the inside line, and then he has the advantage.
Yeah, Moreno tried to muscle him over a little bit, but Max is having none of that. And so he squeezed him back out onto the cleaner area of track. So that battle continues. Castroneves is our race leader, 1.6 seconds ahead of Juan Montoya, still dealing with traffic. And Montoya's got past Gidley. That's interesting. Oh, and going up the hill there, Tagliani was under pressure. Roberto Moreno's out. Roberto Moreno out there, and that is Tagliani and Moreno. I think they made contact. A lot of other cars. We'll have to see who else is off up there. But all sorts of drama as they went up to turn number 5. So I saw Tagliani coming under attack there as they went up towards turn 5, but Moreno was already off. I hadn't realized that initially. Moreno was already off at that point. Let's take another look. Moreno behind Max Papis. Surely he didn't try from back there. No, he didn't. He just lost it himself, under braking behind Max Papis. And now look, you may see Tagliani come into view here from our other camera. Let's take another look at this.
This is from turn 6. Looking back, you can see Moreno there spinning off, and that's a bad mistake by Roberto Moreno. Very uncharacteristic mistake. And maybe the camera can pan out a bit wider. No, it can't.
Yeah, it wasn't far behind. Who was trying to get past Tagliani at that point? Because I saw out of
Jourdain.
Jourdain. Well, I saw Jourdain trying to make a move on Tagliani up into this corner. We could just see the entrance from our commentary position. There's another view, and that was a bad mistake from Roberto. I know he's got frustrated, but he's just thrown away any chance of scoring points here today. And remember, running very well in the series, he's in 5th place on the championship. And we have a full course yellow, our first of the day. This will close everybody up again, of course, and I think it's a little too early for anybody to make pit stops. I suppose you might get a few guys at the back trying to do something, but for the leaders it's too early for them to really think about making pit stops. If we get a yellow now, Tagliani's car down there, that will be towed away. And we are seeing 1 or 2 from the back coming in. That's Jourdain. Shinji Nakano, meanwhile, looks as though his race is over. His car's being pushed out of the way.
Yeah, the previous lap, for some reason, he disappeared. Not quite sure why that was.
Take another look at a replay of what's caused this caution. Meanwhile, we are seeing the leader come in now. I'm surprised at this. Coming into the pits is Helio Castroneves to refuel. And I wonder if we'll see all the leaders following his lead. They may well now all decide to come in. Once the leader decides to do that, often the others... Oh, Montoya's got a problem. The jack's broken. The jack, yeah, the jack collapsed and that... Oh, would you believe it? Frankitti's got past him now, and all that great work they did earlier on has been thrown away once again. Dear, oh dear. Gilles de Ferran gets out in front of Franchitti. They almost hit each other there. De Ferran just gets out in front of Dario Franchitti, and the two of them now have got ahead once more of Juan Montoya. Wow, interesting stuff indeed as they decide to come in. Lap number 48, and there are still some 35 laps to do from this point. And there, look how the front collapsed. The airline came out. Okay, the airline came out for some reason, and it collapsed, and then they had to get the jack front and rear. They were using manual jacks front and rear in the end there for Montoya, and that was a bad mistake. And look at de Ferran when he came out of his pit. He almost hit Dario Franchitti, but just managed to get out in front of him.
Wow, that was close.
It was indeed. Well, they survived, and everybody trying to get themselves together under this full course caution. 35 laps remaining, and I can't really see them making it through without having to stop again, unless they can pull some pretty miraculous fuel mileage out here. We'll take a break. Castroneves is our race leader. On board here with Mark Blundell. He's still in the race, but he's down in 19th position. And just ahead of him up the road is Adrian Fernandez. There is Adrian. In fact, this is the alternative view from the back of Adrian's car. Yeah,
and these guys were all held up behind the pace car, which makes that strategy of Carponche and Tracy coming in all the more crucial, if you like, because while these guys here, there was actually 5 on us: Canaan, De Matter, Alex Barron, Fernandez and Mark Blundell were all held up behind the pace car. So before they were able to run around and pick up the back of the field, they'd just been waved past the pace car, but have not yet caught up to the back of the field. And in the meantime, Tracy and Carponche able to make their pit stop, still on the lead lap, of course, and rejoin before those other guys could catch up.
Now, here's some tactics as well from Neiman Haas, bringing one of their cars in, who is now in 5th place, Christian Fittipaldi. He also now is going to make it through without stopping again. So they're getting in at the end of this caution period to refuel. Now, interesting choice of tactics, and it looks as though Michael Andretti, alternatively, will stay out there, and he will have to make another longer stop later on in this race. And remember, his stop will be longer than anybody else's, even though most of the others will have to go. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa! That was very, very close to contact between Christian Fittipaldi and Tasso Marquez.
It was, wasn't it? I think Christian Fittipaldi saw him coming at the last moment there, and you can see that Fittipaldi does rejoin just ahead of Cristiano De Matter. So very interesting strategy being played out there. We'll see how that pans out. That could be very, very interesting indeed.
Yes, so Christian won't have to stop again if everything goes according to plan. Castroneves leads de Ferran and Franchitti, exactly as they started, in fact, we're back to now, except for the fact that Andretti is now in 4th position. As into the pits comes Luis Garcia. No great importance to that. But as I say, Michael Andretti now up into 4th place. Will the Neiman Haas tactics work here? What a crucial phase of the championship to start gambling on tactics, but it could be a good move for them. And they split their decision a little bit with Christian Fittipaldi coming into the pit. Take another look at this. Fittipaldi coming out and very nearly making contact with fellow Brazilian Tasso Marquez. Thankfully saw him at the last moment.
Yeah, at the last moment, yeah. Whew, that was close. And this is a Good move certainly by Newman Haas to bring him in right then, and he now will presumably have enough fuel to go the distance. It's going to be tight though. He might be in need of another lap or two of caution. They're asking him to go 30 laps before the end of this race, and the longest we saw anybody go on the first stint was 29 laps, so pretty close. Mind you, at the beginning of the race, of course, you have two pace laps and a parade lap as well, so you don't use up much fuel during those laps, but it's going to be very, very close, and this could be a really interesting run now for Prix. But here goes the green flag.
Here we go, back to racing again. Castroneves leads them away as they go across the line onto lap number 55. Castroneves leads, De Ferran is in second. Look at Michael Andretti, he's in that fourth, and just getting past the lapped car of Memo Gidley to give himself a bit of clear space, so he will be part of that leading quartet, and having got past Gidley, doesn't have to worry about any lapped cars between himself and the other leaders. Behind Gidley then, Herta is running in fifth, with Kenny Breck in sixth, Montoya in seventh, ahead of Max Papis in eighth position, and then Gugelmin ninth, Vassar 10th, and Sevilla in 11th. So I think Montoya managed to get past Papis, did he, on that run down towards the first corner, or
he was ahead of Papis already, so if he was trying to get away past Kenny Breck though, that would be the battle for sixth position now, with Christian Fittipaldi having come into the pits.
Tony Kanaan going past, I think that's Tagliani. We'll check which one of the players' cars that was, and that didn't seem to be going very quickly up the hill. Not a usual place to overtake, so there must have been some problems there. Meanwhile, as you say, Kenny Breck under pressure here from Juan Montoya. Look at Montoya in the target car, looking for a way past, down into turn number 11. No chance there. Now he tries to get on the power cleanly, accelerating onto start-finish.
He certainly thought about it, didn't he? You could see the brainwaves coming out. Can I make it? Can I make it? And Breck just stayed out a little bit wide, coming off turn 10 there, before moving across to take the outside line, the right-hand side of the track, coming into turn 11. And Montoya decided now, not close enough, or at least I don't think he knows I'm coming, so I'm going to wait till one more lap and try and get just a little bit closer as I go through turn 10 and try and make that move really nice and cleanly.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem to have worked for him, so he has to stay in behind that Reynard Ford of Kenny Breck, accelerating up just over the curve there. In fact, that was his teammate Jimmy Vassar there. There's Jimmy, there's Paul Tracy. Jimmy over the curve slightly, didn't affect him. He's 10th with Tracy has just Sevilla's got past them both. That's interesting. Sevilla's just got past Vassar, so Sevilla, who was between these two, has now moved up into 10th place himself.
Good move there by the young Spaniard, who really has created an excellent impression this year.
Yeah, another good job from him. Look at Tracy, not really an overtaking opportunity down through the rainy curve, turn number 9, and
I think Mark Blundell came past the back of the field there. I think he might have just made a pit stop on the lap again. It's out of our sight here, so we couldn't see. Either he had a spin, or, I hope more likely, he made a quick pit stop.
Let's just look at Serbia. Oh, he got down the inside of Vassar. That was aggressive, but he made it work, didn't he? Good move, that. Once again from Oriol Serbia. And he has impressed us, as we said, so often this year. I think Blundell did come in the pits. I think I heard a report that Blundell had been in, Jeremy, so I think Blundell has made a pit stop. Still down in 18th position at this point in the race, as we continue to watch Vassar and Tracy. Tracy just 6 points behind Andretti in the championship, winning the last two races, Paul Tracy, but struggling here today to really feature in the points chase. He's got a potential 1 point where he is at the moment if he finishes in 12th place. Up the hill, there goes Herta, Kenny Breck, Montoya, Papis, Gugelmin. Look at their little jostling for position up the hill as Tracy under pressure from Carpentier. Remember, both Tracy and Carpentier filled up with fuel, topped off their fuel tanks, and will not have to stop again if, well, I say that, they're going to have to go a long way on the fuel if they don't stop again, and could really do with a couple of laps of yellow, I would say, to make it all the way, but they may well try to do it on the fuel they've got in the cars.
I'm sure they will try to do it on the fuel they have in the cars, and just lean it down as far as it will go and run just a very conservative pace. There's various ways of driving these cars that you can save fuel. Just be easy on the throttle, change gear a little bit earlier than you would normally, and you can save quite a bit of fuel doing that. The fuel everybody has exactly the same amount of fuel coming into this races, and it's allocated on a minimum consumption of 1.85 miles to the gallon. So everybody has exactly the same amount of fuel. It's a question of how you manage that fuel as the race goes on.
Looking at the battle between Montoya and Breck, Kenny Breck in the Shell car, the Swedish driver, up against the Colombian Juan Montoya who dominated, well, not dominated last year. He was involved in a huge championship battle, of course, with Dario Franchitti last year. But it was such an impressive rookie season to take the title with 7 wins and 7 pole positions. This year it hasn't been quite so successful for him, but it hasn't seen him drive at any less than 100% all season long. Down the hill, always spectacular to watch. And let's just watch him for a second or two down through the latter part of the lap. Heads out to come across the line and complete 58 laps out of 83. 25 laps still to go here. Castroneves with just a half-second advantage over teammate Gilles de Ferran. Franchitti pushing in third. Tony Kanaan is in, shaking his head. Doesn't look happy at all. Is this more than a routine stop? It could well be for Tony Kanaan. But up front, the 2 Brazilians. And the Penske bandwagon continues, looking for another 1-2 finish here this weekend. Dario Franchitti staying with them at the moment. Andretti in 4th. Brian Herter in 5th, Kenny Breck in 6th, and Juan Montoya in 7th place, followed by Papis, Gugelmin, Sevilla, Vassar and Tracy. Still some way to go here, and we're just going to have to keep an eye on them all to see what they can do. Michael Andretti comes into the pits for his final stop, and this will have to be a full tank of fuel. 23 laps to go.
Before tires and fuel.
Listen up on the radio, and we'll hear them as they tell Michael, remind Michael what to do. He's got to get it clean in here. And of course, stopping on a green, losing a lot of places, but we will see a lot of cars having to make pit stops. So for a while, Michael will be nowhere. He could end up slightly better off at the end, but will this strategy work for him? Good clean stop. And away comes Michael Andretti. Now, that will put him way down the order. But that's all his pit stops done, and these leaders will have to make a short stop in a little while. Meanwhile, Tagliani has been into the pits, as we've seen, and he is out of his car, as we thought he might be. We've got a chance to go and speak to him.
You had all kinds of problems today. What ends up being the problem that puts you on this side of the wall?
Well, actually, you know, the Player Sports Stat team gave me a very fast car. We showed that in the warm-up this morning. But we had a problem with the engine. We thought it was a coil, and after that we changed the coil, and it seems that it's a spark plug that it's, you know, defect, and we were running with a lot of less power than everybody else. So my car was very fast. I was just disappointed for all the guys because the engine was not there today, and the incident, Moreno was in the wall, yellow flag, and Michael Jourdain tried to pass me under yellow, so that was a pretty dumb move.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good point, that, about the attempted pass of Jourdain. Yellows presumably were already showing, although Jourdain may not have seen them at that point, but no excuse, you can't pass if there's been an accident in front of you. So, Tagliani out of this race, and Castroneves continues to lead, as he has done pretty much most of the way here. And Andretti is the one who's dropped down the order now. He has emerged in 15th position after that last pit stop. And you can see where those last pit stops were made for most of the leaders on lap number 48. So they should be able to get quite a long way. That should lead them up to about lap number 76, 77. But perhaps they might even try and get all the way. I mean, I'd be amazed if they can get all the way from there to the end. 35 laps they would need to complete. I can't really imagine they're going to be able to push that hard, but maybe they will.
Well,
we'll have to wait and see.
Well, yeah, of those 35 laps, of the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those were under caution. So generally say you use perhaps half as much fuel under caution as you do when you're under race conditions. So they're still talking 31 or so laps of fuel, and it's certainly going to be a tall order. But having said that, the early stage of the race, Castroneves was running around 1 minute 11 second laps, and right now he's running 1 minute 12 and a half second laps, so a good bit slower to try and compensate for that.
Yeah, so maybe they will try and make it through without stopping. That's going to be brave, and it may mean that the drivers who stopped later and have put the additional fuel on are going to be able to do something. Watch out, we'll watch particularly for Michael Andretti's progress. But as we know here, even when you've got the wick turned up, it's very hard to overtake. So Michael, who's got a full tank of fuel, can run full rich, I still wonder whether he's actually going to be able to pass people sufficiently. If these guys don't make stops, he's going to be a long, long way back. Andretti just going past us. He's got about 10 seconds between him and the next man. That is Marc Blondel that he has to pass. On board with Juan Montoya. Montoya in 6th place after that disastrous earlier stop, and still following Kenny Breck at this point.
He's just running at the same sort of pace. Everybody else everybody running the same sort of pace at the moment, all running about 1 minute 12.678, something around about that, and pretty much status quo at the moment. They're all hoping they can reach the finish. I wonder whether someone's going to be brave and make a move earlier on. Michael Andretti, because he was committed to having to make a pit stop around about when he did, because that's when he was going to run out of fuel otherwise, because he did not make a pit stop under that previous yellow. So Christian Fittipaldi is in a pretty interesting position right now. He's running in 12th. He should be able to run a pretty rich mixture, full power for him, whereas some of those other guys, if they're trying to get to the end without making another pit stop, they could run a much leaner mixture, which gives you quite a bit less horsepower.
Now, Michael Andretti is the fastest man on the track at the moment. No great surprise there. He just did a 1 minute 11.6, but Cristiano D'Amato, who's behind him, almost as fast, 1 minute 11.7. And that's about a second and a bit faster than the leaders are lapping at the moment. So Michael Andretti really putting some quick laps together, but he is going to find it hard once he comes up behind slower cars to find a way through. 1 minute 12.5 last lap there for Castroneves. 12.8 for De Ferran, and the same sort of time for Dario Franchitti, who holds on to 3rd position. Fuel economy mode for these race leaders, trying to be as cautious as possible, trying to use perhaps a gear higher at some of the corners, carry as much speed into the corners as possible, run a slightly higher gear through some of them to reduce the amount of revs they're using. Revs is what hurts fuel consumption, so they'll be changing up just a fraction earlier than they would, particularly on a qualifying lap, for example, where they'd be maxing out the revs completely. But here, they're just trying to use slightly less revs and still go quickly. Down the hill at the corkscrew. Hard on the power, and the top 3 have been together pretty much throughout this race. We had Montoya splitting them at one point, but he now, of course, tucked in behind Kenny Breck. Gilles de Ferran still in good shape in terms of opening up a points advantage here. Of course, Kenny Breck's still running well, and he's with that lead group of 6 drivers in the championship. He's running in 5th place, rather. But in terms of Tracy and Andretti and all those guys, they are all quite a lot further back. So De Ferran himself in good shape. Could end up with some 132 points if he stays in that 2nd position. Michael Andretti on 126 at the moment. Just depends really where Michael gets to by the end of the race. Michael Andretti now still a little bit of time behind Marc Blondel, but catching him every lap, and still the fastest man on the track with the 1 minute 11.3 on that last lap for Michael Andretti. Just looking at the points difference, interesting coming into this race, it's the closest differential that we've had between drivers up at the top of the table after 15 races. You can see in the past the championship hasn't been quite as close at this point, and if the race ended where it is now, you had a quick look there at the championship, it would be a 6-point advantage for Gilles de Ferran over Michael Andretti, but Michael may well be able to get into the points before the end of this one.
Yeah, there's still 15 laps to go.
2.1 plus 1.
2.1.
2.1 on fuel.
Plus 1. 2.1 is the fuel consumption he's actually getting, plus 1. I think, well, I hope for Castroneves that means he's got enough fuel for 1 more lap than he needs. Otherwise, it's one lap less than he needs, which would not be quite such good news. So we'll continue to monitor the radio. That was Tim Sindrick, who is the president of Penske Racing. He calls the strategy for Helio Castroneves.
So the battles continue, and Franchitti staying very much in the hunt. Brian Herter with this good drive, Jeremy, from Herter once again. Not having been in the cockpit of a racing car very much this season, having subbed for a number of drivers throughout the year, but having not having really much experience. Oh, and Kanan's off. Kanan, that's down at turn 2. We saw a cloud of dust from a commentary position, but couldn't see the car, hidden by the marquees down there. And it's Tony Kanan who's taken a trip onto the dirt.
Oops. Off there in turn 2. He was actually running pretty quickly, was Tony. He'd made a pit stop not too long ago, and just, on lap 58 it was obviously a long pit stop again, so 2 bad pit stops for that crew this race, and he's getting increasingly frustrated, I think.
Yeah, locked up coming down the hill there into that turn 2. Let's take another look. This is what happened to Kanan. Did he lock the rears a little bit, got unstable, and then just basically couldn't hold it, had to come off the brakes to avoid spinning, and then that took him down onto the gravel. But here at Laguna Seca, it appears you can just drive straight across the gravel and get back out. A little bit of perhaps nice in your race when you can do that, but of course part of the contention here this weekend was the condition of the gravel traps and the fact that they aren't slowing cars down much when they go off in an accident situation, and that has been a major concern for the drivers. They did re-rake all the gravel traps to at least avoid the cars being launched by them, but even when Tracy went off on Saturday morning, didn't seem to slow the car down as much as one might hope from a gravel trap in a normal situation. Looking at Oriol Servia here, he's running in 8th place, Jimmy Vasser right behind him, and then Paul Tracy running 10th, and Patrick Carpentier in 11th.
That's right, and interesting, although all those guys towards the bottom end of the top 12, they're all running 1 minute 13 second laps. The race leader, 1 minute 12.8. The first sort of 5 or 6 are running about the same sort of lap times. Meanwhile, 14th place Blundell and Andretti, D'Amata and Papis all behind him. They're all in the 11, so they're catching up at a second a lap.
Jimmy Vasser making a move on Servia. That made it look very easy. We saw Servia pass him earlier on. Has he gone in a bit deep? Oh, good side-by-side, yes. Well done, Servia. Didn't panic, didn't try and overcook it. Vasser had the line in, but Servia had superior speed out, and this has given Tracy an opportunity to close right up behind Vasser, but can't make the move into turn number 4. Oh, look at this now. Tracy under pressure from Carpentier. Still can't go through. Meanwhile, Tony Kanaan locked up again at the hairpin a second ago. Nearly did his same situation and skated off. So he may be struggling with some sort of brake problem there, but he has got back on again. So Tony in trouble here. Meanwhile, up front, Elio Castroneves and Gilles de Ferran are 2 race leaders looking for a Penske 1-2 again. Can this man do anything about it? Team Green, Dario Franchitti, confirmed as we know, another season at least at Team Green, doing just a 1-year deal for next year, as all the teams down in pit lane at the moment are busy watching the maths of the fuel consumption, hoping that they're going to get enough fuel mileage to complete the final 13 laps that are required here. 70 laps done, 83 laps in this race, and it's going to be a tough call to make the end of this race on the amount of fuel in some of these cars. Allegiance to Rockingham being shown on Brian Herta's car, by the way, there, Jeremy. Interesting to see that. Forsyth himself, Jerry Forsyth, of course, involved in the British Rockingham circuit.
That's right, one of the partners in that new super speedway being built in England. That's a very exciting project around. I know Jerry Forsyth and his crew there are very, very proud of it as well. So giving a little bit of promotion there on the side of Brian Herta's car. It's great to see Herta back in action, and he's done a superb job this weekend.
The west coast of California, what a beautiful spot this is. The Monterey Peninsula, not far from Carmel and Pebble Beach. It's the venue for this race. It's still got some 12 laps to go and lots of action to come. Watching the leaders down through the corkscrew. The overhead shot makes it look almost flat, but let me tell you, it's a very steep hill, and if you have to climb up it, walking up that part of the track, as we were doing the other day, watching down there on Friday, it's quite hard work on the legs, so it just shows you much steeper in real life than it looks on TV. Look at Herta, by the way, in the blue car. He's closed up a little bit to these top 3 once again.
Yes, he has, and here's a replay of Paul Tracy making a move there down the inside of Jimmy Vasser. And Vasser left him plenty of room, didn't he? Certainly, and Paul Tracy said, well, if you're going to do that, I'll take advantage of that. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. V. I will go on past those 2 near neighbours in Las Vegas, Nevada, and close, pretty good buddies, and they go karting down to a track actually owned by Brian Herta, which is just a few miles down the road.
Yeah, and Brian Herta announcing a Star of Tomorrow karting event at that track, looking to try and promote karters' interests as they try and progress up through the ranks of motorsport. Good to see Brian Herta and Memo Gidley and Paul Tracy and others putting quite a lot of effort back into the sport, Jeremy, giving youngsters the opportunity to perhaps follow in their footsteps in the future.
Right on
That's
fuel.
very...
Just watching it. Just be careful careful on the overtake. Only use it when you think you've got an opportunity. You're doing a great job.
That's Barry Green there on the radio saying you think you're okay on the fuel, don't use the overtake button too often. I think maybe you use it to try and get past Jimmy Vasser there. And what that means is when they're running full lean mixture on these engines, they're probably 40 horsepower or so down on whether they're running a full rich mixture. And we talked about the fuel mixture before, that air fuel mixture that goes into the combustion chambers on these engines. A rich mixture means more fuel, less air, which is more horsepower but worse fuel consumption. A lean mixture, more air, less fuel, better fuel consumption, less horsepower. But if you're running that lean mixture, when Barry Keane is talking about the overtake button, when you press that overtake button for a period of 6 or 7 seconds, it will automatically override the lean mixture, give you a full rich mixture, another 40-50 horsepower, hopefully just enough to get past that other guy. It'll use up a little bit more fuel, but the engineers know how much fuel it will use by just doing it for that finite period of time, so they can still keep a track of their fuel consumption.
Just taking a look at Michael Andretti's progress. He did a quick lap again, but in fact Blondell speeded up a lot on that last lap. Blondell did in a 1:11.7 as well, same sort of pace as Andretti. Just a reminder on how the points are awarded: 20 points for the win, 16 points for second, and they pay all the way down to 12. So quite different to Formula 1 points, and that means you can get a bit of a jump on somebody. 1 point for most laps led in a race as well today, and we know who will have won that. That will be Helio Castroneves, no doubt about the extra point for him. He also got the extra point anyway for scoring pole position, but he doesn't feature as strongly in the championship as his teammate Gilles de Ferran, that's for sure. I wonder if Penske will bring in any team orders as we get into the latter part of this race. Both of them at the moment desperately trying to conserve fuel and stay ahead of Franchitti and Herta. Herta is a threat though with the Ford power. Kenny Breck still there in 5th. Watch out for Montoya. All of them watching fuel as carefully as possible. And anything could still happen here at Laguna Seca in the remaining 7 laps. So Moreno down but not out as we continue our look at the race leaders. Castroneves, with just 4 laps to go now, has been in control of this race. He still has teammate Gilles de Ferran right behind him. Franchitti in 3rd, and this great comeback for Brian Herta, his first outing in this Reynard Ford this year, and driven consistently all the way through this race. It was qualifying that put him up here, and his race performance has just confirmed that. Former 3 times pole sitter here.
I need all the fuel you can give me. 3 laps remain.
Still being told they need to give all the fuel they can give me. That's Tim Cindric, I think, on the radio to Helio Castroneves. And I think we might have a chance to talk to Tim Cindric in a moment. He is on the radio to Helio Castroneves, but he's got a chance to talk to us.
Has the fuel conservation work for you? Can you make it to the end?
Yeah, at this point, unless we have a surprise or whatever, I think we're in good shape. He's done a great job at this point.
Very nervous, or do you have a bit in reserve now?
We think we have a little in reserve, but you're always nervous at this point, so we'll see what happens.
Thanks, Tim.
Well, we've certainly seen it in the past, Jeremy, where they think they've got enough, and for some reason it doesn't pick up that last little bit in the tank, does it?
Yes, we have. We've seen that several times. We saw it a couple of times just last weekend, in fact. And for some of them it did work, and some of them it didn't. And Michael Andretti and Juan Montoya both stopped there with fuel problems. Apparently, Montoya's crew told me there was a little bit of fuel left in that car, and it was a fuel pump problem of some sort. They didn't actually run him out of fuel, but it was certainly close, and they were pushing the envelope in any case.
Well, I have to say that everybody here this afternoon of the leaders has done a great job in terms of conserving fuel. Well, it looks like it. I shouldn't see feet too early. 2 laps to go, 4.5 miles. They could still well run out of fuel, but it looks, I thought they were going to have to stop again, but they managed to squeeze that fuel consumption out to the absolute limit. And because really all the leaders were on that same strategy except for Andretti, and because of the nature of this track in that it's so hard to overtake, Servier and Tracy side by side. Tracy are trying to get that 8th place, and it didn't quite come off. We didn't see the beginning of that. Tracy survives, but there was obviously a little bit of a run-in together between those two.
Yeah, and Tracy's just trying to get another point. He's got himself into 9th place, which is pretty good after starting 13th, and good reliability in this race. So he's made up positions, and he needs all the points he can get, so that's why he is desperately trying to make up ground.
Here is what happened. He got down the inside, but came in too quick. Ran wide. Sevilla said thank you very much, went back down on the inside, and Tracy had to slot in behind him. Similar to what happened to Sevilla earlier on in this race with Jimmy Vasser. So Sevilla unfazed by that attempt from Paul Tracy to overtake, and so Sevilla stays 8th and Paul Tracy stays 9th. Across the line this time, they will get the white flag, and it looks like Team Penske are going to take another 1-2 finish. They have been brilliant on the road courses this year. What a great job the team has done, using the Reynard chassis as their base, but great work from the design team in Poole, in Dorset in the UK, to put their own little tweaks on this car. Aerodynamic tweaks, suspension tweaks, all their own little bits and pieces which have helped make these cars the dominant cars on the road courses. And how Tracy spun it. Tracy in danger of losing some vital championship points here. Tracy rejoins behind Carpentier and Fittipaldi, and that puts him back down into 12th place. And that's so crucial at this stage in the championship. Tracy has thrown away some valuable points there. Championship leader Michael Andretti still way down in 15th. He is not going to score any points here today. De Ferran is going to be the big gainer here. Kenny Breck's going to be in good shape, but this man, Helio Castroneves, has been the star of the show. He took pole position in qualifying, and he has held on to it all the way through this race pretty much. Under pressure, more in terms of fuel consumption than from other drivers, but Helio Castroneves is coming through to take his third victory of the season. He takes the victory. De Ferran takes second.
Great job, guys. Great job.
And the usual celebrations, no doubt, from Helio Castroneves. He won in Detroit, his first win of the season. He won in Mid-Ohio, and now he takes win number 3 here at Laguna Seca. And he's changed that sequence of the two Team Penske drivers. Normally they've won from second on the grid. This time he's done it from pole. Good drive from Herta. Breck and Montoya 5th and 6th. Gugelmin, top Mercedes runner after the news that they're pulling out. Well, at least that's some consolation. Vassar in 8th, then Carpentier, Fittipaldi, Tracy and Fernandez, the final point scorers.
Yeah, it's just a very, very good run for Mauricio Gugelmin there, and certainly fuel consumption has been one of the problems with that Mercedes-Benz engine this year. So clearly there today, Gugelmin able to get excellent fuel consumption and bring that car home to a very steady 7th place finish, and that's a very, very good run for those guys.
Helio Castroneves continues to celebrate down there at the finish line, and it just shows you the efficiency of the teams, the engineers, how they managed to get this fuel consumption. It was so tight on fuel to do that long final stint, and yet they all managed it, bar Oriol Servia. Shows you how switched on the drivers have to be in their driving techniques, and how switched on the teams have to be. Look at the points differences. De Ferran, our new points leader, 6 points over Michael Andretti, 10 points back to Paul Tracy, but Fernandez, Kenny Breck, Moreno, all still within 20 points. So we started with 6 drivers within 20 points. We've still got 6 drivers within 20 points.
Yeah, they're even closer now, aren't they? Just 17 covering those 6. And then once again, a whole bunch of shuffling and positions there amongst that top 6. But yes, look at there in 7th place now, Helio Castroneves. Only less than 30 points behind, 29 points behind. We've still got 4 races to go, and that young man has been absolutely flying these last few races.
What a tremendous achievement for this team. They love this place.
Yeah, they do, and look at that. Helio Castroneves, that is Tim Cindric there, the president of Penske Racing, his crew chief Rick Reineman, and the whole crew. Everybody gets a hug.
Well, it's been a fantastic day for Team Penske. Another 1-2 result with Franchitti up there in 3rd position, and they will be looking forward to the run of races still to come as they keep alive their championship chase. The teams will be racing next week again at St. Louis on the Gateway Oval, where we'll see whether they can open up a little bit more of a championship lead. But today certainly has been all about this team, Team Penske, and they'll be trying to do it again next time around. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more, log on to ESPN.com. From Ben Edwards and Jeremy Shaw, thank you for joining us. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye for now.